So Rick, I'm curious, rule number 9 for sales leaders. Don't get smoked in the interview. Like, what is that?
Well, let's face it, everybody's got a great resume.
Sure.
Everybody, most people at least, present themselves really well, right? And so somebody's always getting sold. And so sometimes we get this thing called hiring bias. Wow, this person is really articulate. I could see him in front of my number one client. And oh, by the way, I've got an empty seat to fill. And oh, by the way, I have to actually cover that empty seat until I hire somebody.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right, hiring bias is a real thing. And so, there's a saying out there, and I've got a blog in the waiting to be published on this, Rob. Never go to the grocery store hungry.
Okay, what does that mean?
Have you ever been to the grocery store when you're really, really hungry?
Uh-huh.
Right? And you just start buying all kinds of junk. All right. And you finally get it all home. You're like, oh my God, I'm probably going to gain 10 pounds from this. Nothing is good here. It felt good at the time. So we start to think about, you lean back into the rule, right? Never get smoked in the interview. Well, we got to start being really, really objective about some of our questions. Sometimes people get objective through, do the assessment process. Somebody once asked me, well, how do you not fall in love with somebody who can handle themselves real well in a one-to-one situation? Well, the reality is change your process.
Yeah.
Your process, phone screen, do some phone interviews, create a list of people you actually want to bring back. Then you assess. Now you've got some objective data. You might even actually do some additional, subtraction from that list. But ultimately, when you do that interview, you're going to start to have some objective data and start to drive some interview questions that are really relevant.
Rick, there's so much to unpack with what you just said. So I think one of the big issues organizations make is they interview when they need to, right? Number one.
Right. They go to the grocery store hungry when they need to. Yep.
Right. And so they're out of practice.
Oh, I love that.
Right. Which they susceptible to getting smoked.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Right. And so when we're out of practice, no different than somebody in sales mastery, right, or one of our advanced classes, if you're not well rehearsed, you're just out of practice, you're not going to perform well. The other issue is I'm a true believer as a leader, you should have a pipeline at all times, right, of people you're potentially talking to, not because we're hiring, right? But what if you have that diamond in the rough that you just happen to come across because you're making it intentional? That person's going to come into your organization and totally change the landscape. But if you're not out in the wild looking for it, you're probably going to miss it. Yeah,
it'll never happen. When we think about that rule, don't get smoked in the interview. I think a good litmus test for sales leaders, whether they have people who perform at rock star level or whether they have people who struggle. I think the question you really have to ask yourself if you're the sales leader is, did my, rock star sales leadership help them curate their rock star status with us? And if they're not rock star status, did I actually hire them that way?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it someplace in between? Did I hire them this way? Did I make them this way? Right, wrong, or indifferent? And oftentimes we go back to kind of what you just said. Hiring is sometimes an episodic event where we don't have muscle memory on. Mm-hmm. And so we should always be, out there with our radar up for the next, big talent. So we don't get smoked in that interview.
Well, and how important is it to have a defined process when it comes to hiring from your vantage point?
I think it's really important. The repeatable process. People are going to call audibles once in a while on that, but the repeatable process, the one that, allows us to be as objective as we can, inside the, the hiring environment.
Yeah, and you mentioned assessments, and I know I think we both do this, but we coach our clients to kind of put that early in the process. And why do we have them do that early in the process versus kind of taking them through the whole interview process and kind of making that a last to do? Like, why would that be a bad idea?
I don't think it would be a bad idea to put it early in a process.
No, I meant at the end.
Oh,
some people go, well, I don't want to necessarily spend the money on the assessment. Let's just wait till the end, and that could be like one of the final things we do. Why is that a bad idea?
Well, I think it's a bad idea because in most cases their minds are already made up, and they're hoping that the assessment would support their
fingers crossed.
Right, fingers crossed. The assessment will support their decision, and they're jiu-jitsu masters at hiring people.
And sometimes it can create that bias that you were talking about earlier,
Mm-hmm.
right? Where they spent time with these people, they carried themselves well for the 1-2 hours they were with them, right? The last stage is to put this assessment in front of them, they bomb it. And what sometimes happens is people go against the assessment, the objective view of the candidate, and they end up hiring him anyway. And then 6, 8, 10, 12 months down the road, they start to figure out the assessment was pretty spot on.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point with the assessments. Like we do most of our assessment work on the pre-hire side. Now, sometimes organizations come to us and ask for, a gap analysis of their team. But most of what we do is on the hiring side. And, some people will get smoked. Some people just don't believe the data. They're just looking to say they checked the box and had the assessment done. And, I fundamentally believe that when people take assessments and do stuff like that, and when they're first hired, and this is really important, when people are first hired, I think generally speaking, they want to do a good job. They have great intentions. I don't know anybody who gets hired on day one says, God, I hope in 6 months I get fired. That doesn't happen. And so, like, generally speaking, they're out there doing everything they can. They're learning, they're interacting, they're starting to, create relationships and all of that stuff. But ultimately what happens is they'll get into the comfort zone. Once they stop operating on this sort of adrenaline rush of being hired and wanting to do a great job, once that subsides, we're going to deal with the real person. And usually that assessment is somebody who you're going to see not on day one, probably not in 6 months, but I guarantee you at a minimum within 1 year, you're going to see the same person operate as you see in that assessment.
Yeah, 100%. And even philosophically too, when somebody's creating the blueprint for the hiring process, the ability to bring technology into it, to maybe like one of those interviews is a Zoom call. I want to see how somebody carries themselves online.
Yeah.
Are they mindful of their background? What does the audio sound like? How do they present themselves on screen? And to me, critically important, especially if you are selling in one way, shape, or form virtually. 2, using different settings. One in the office, maybe one outside. I had one client who used to take all of his candidates golfing. And when I first learned this strategy, I said, well, you got to tell me a little bit more about this. Like, I'm assuming there's some method to the madness here. And he goes, well, Rob, you can really tell what somebody's like. You spend 4 hours with them, 4.5 hours. If it's a really bad round, might be 5. But how do they handle when they hit a bad shot? Do they have integrity to the game? Which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah. Certainly. Play by the rules.
Yeah. Do they play by the rules? If it is a nice golf course, maybe you have a caddy. How do you treat your caddy? How do you treat the people that are serving you at the turn? Mm-hmm. And, it got me thinking, and as part of like a lot of the organizations that I work with, I encourage them to take them to dinner, invite their spouse, right? How do they treat the waiter or waitress when they come to the table? I think there's a lot to be gleaned when you take them outside of the environment of an office.
So I think there's something to that, right? Getting to understand people. I tend to think like today, more so than ever, I don't know, it's probably just technology that sort of drives into this, but today hiring is an event.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a fundamental belief is when it's an event, all right, there's a start, there's a finish. And everything we do is sort of caught up in this, atmosphere of the event. The reality is I think people need to start looking at hiring as an outcome, because it's not the event we're looking at, whether that was a positive event or a negative event. It's always going to be the outcome. The outcome is going to be judged based on that employee in that 1 year window. Are they moving the dial? Is there forward motion? Are we going to keep them?
Yeah. And there was one experience you and I had that I think is relevant to this conversation, where we had a candidate, and he's well connected, had a ton of connections on LinkedIn. Outside looking in, we're like, man, this guy's connected all over the place. And as I was driving down the road one day, it occurred to me, I'm like, wait a second, Rick and I are fairly connected in our market. Like, we know a lot of people.
And I've never met that dude.
One time. And so I called you up and I said, Rick, I'm driving down the road, and it occurred to me, as connected as this guy says he is, we know nobody that's connected to this guy. And we quickly kind of did an about face, because online it looked like he was doing all the right things.
Yeah. Could we have hired him? Absolutely. But, I just think that, it's no different than the buying process, right? People buy based on how they feel. And so, we have to have enough touches with people. We have to triangulate, what we're seeing, what we're hearing, and what we're feeling, to make the best decision possible, so we don't get smoked in the interview.